Okay. All right. Well, welcome. My name is Mike Sir Lewis, and I am one of the senior designers here at Cabinet Desktop. We are a kitchen and bath remodeling store, so we do complete kitchen and bath remodeling, so design, product sales, and the labor services that go along with it. Today I'm going to take us on an adventure. Islands, the oasis of a kitchen. Try to bring some warmth. We've had a long winter. Seems like it's still going on, but we'll bring some warmth to this by showing some cool but warm looking island designs. So, all right, so here's the question, right? Will an island work for you? There's a little cartoon. A lot of people that come in and they ask that. Can I do an island in my kitchen? Well, generally we have to do a job site visit to see if it's even possible. But sometimes clients bring in dimensions and we can kind of look there to see if that's even something to entertain. So here is an example of a typical 18 by 12 U-shaped kitchen. This would be the design where you come in through the foyer here. These are the steps that go down to the basement. The other steps going upstairs would be above them. This would probably be the great room out here. Maybe a half wall right there that you look into the great room. And then out here might be, some people convert it to an office, or maybe it's the dining room. And then you have that front room that nobody probably ever uses out front here. So a pretty typical design. They have the U shape, they have the seating area, but the seating area is so close to the table, it really doesn't function as a seating area. So with this type of example, we could put an island in here. It wouldn't be a really big island, but I think it would still open the kitchen up. So by taking across here, this is where that peninsula was. You can actually add another cabinet, maybe an angled cabinet, so that you can get to the table very easily. You have good adequate spacing going around this island. This might be the only tight area right there. If they change to a counter depth refrigerator, that would help with that situation. This is roughly a 5-foot island, and the countertop depth would be about 27 inches. So there wouldn't be a seating area on there, but it would give them a decent workspace. That's an example of what that island would look like. So there's your 5-foot island, 27-inch countertop, nice workspace. And as far as that goes, this is another example of that similar size island. If you took this portion, we could put a seating area on there if the cabinet was only 12 inches deep. So if you did want to have seats, you could still end up with that same deep countertop like that, but have seating area on the back side. The one thing we'd have to take into consideration is for these covers to really fasten that down, because it doesn't give a whole lot of structural point. So for sure having some type of panel here to hold that island steady so we don't have any issues that way. Again, this is another small island. You'll see in this picture coming up where I make a little bit more room to get a seating area, because that actually has a little overhang on there. Typically, you need about 12 inches of overhang to sit at comfortably. We've gotten away with 10 or less, but it's maybe not the most comfortable to sit at. I heard the bell ding. An angel just got his wings, maybe, right? All right, this island here is that same island, but you can kind of see from a storage standpoint, in that 5-foot island, you can have rollouts in there and plenty of storage. So versus that peninsula that came out, I think you gain more storage, because that peninsula, you've got that corner that's just dead space, and yes, you can go around the back side and access it, but you know, who probably uses that often? So this gives you a lot more storage and versatility with that. Okay, so here's that same size kitchen, but what we did is we moved the table. So a lot of times I see people taking the table and actually using their dining room, so that in this case, we opened this up here. So this was a doorway coming through. And so if this is the dining room, we actually opened that up, slid the refrigerator over, and then did an angle cabinet with some pantry storage here, which created our good walkway around here, but then opened that up and you could have the dining room out here, or what would be your eating area. And if this is all the same floor, you don't have to worry about, you know, the mess aspect of it. But then what we did is we created, in this case, we did the island this way, and you'd have enough for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seats going around. So you've got the seating area right within this area that you can sit at. If you wanted to still leave a table or a small table in here, you could do that, and then take out these 2 cabinets, and you could have enough for a couple seats. Depending on the chair width, you might be able to get additional seating in this section here, but typically 2 seats would be comfortable. 3 would probably be a little tight. So you can just see with a little bit of design, and that's why is a great idea to seek out a designer. You know, I know a lot of people come in with their ideas, and it's great, and it's a good idea to bounce those ideas off the designer, and then we can help come up with a great plan that's going to work for you that way. Okay, so in planning for an island, so here's the educational portion of it. So this is the things that you need to consider when planning for an island so that you're not disappointed in the end. So you do not want to put an oven or range directly across from the dishwasher, because when those two doors tip down, they're going to interfere with each other on that. So, and for seating areas, you need to be, we like to see 2 foot per stool for a person to sit at there. And you don't, the overhang between 12 and 15 inches. So 12 is the standard, but 15 gives you a little bit more comfortability. The island over off to the side that you can see there, those that are on Facebook Live can't see this, but you can see that it has a little bit more overhang, and if a chair is sitting there, you have more room for your feet. So the aisleways in going around the island. So people ask, oh, what do I need for, you know, my spacing? Well, 42 inches is what we recommend as a recommended aisleway. 48 needs to be if there's going to be a wheelchair. So it's important to know, okay, who's in this house. If there is a wheelchair, you need 48 at least on one side to be able to make the turn around the island. Typically, the minimum for an island is 36 inches. So I like to see 3 foot all the way around that island as a minimum for comfortable functionality. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't break the rule. And like that one picture when I showed and I said it was a little tight at the fridge, that was maybe only 30 inches there, which is tight but still passable on there. Another thing to consider is that if you're going to put a cooktop in the island or even a sink in the island, you need at least one outlet on the side of that island so that you're not dragging an appliance cord across, whether it be the cooktop or wet area there. So we like to see, if we're doing an island, I personally like to see an outlet on both sides of the island. But if we need to put electrical, I like to have it at least on one side there. A raised area is nice. So where you're sitting at there, you've got this elevated area, and sometimes makes a nice backdrop, especially if you're putting a sink in there or a cooktop, so hands can't reach that. The other thing is for switches and outlets. You can actually put them right there so you can plug in right at that spot. Or if you have a disposal in the sink so that you don't have to try to open a door and flip a switch there, or they make an air switch that you press down that's actually into the countertop, but you could actually have the switch right on the riser part. Plus, from a dimensional standpoint, to me, I think it's more appealing. You'll see a couple islands. We have one over there, and the island that you're seated at have those different elevation differences. And you'll see some examples of that in some pictures we're going to go through. Glass doors. This is one I think that probably even as designers we sometimes forget about, but if there's going to be glass doors in the lower section of the island, they must be tempered glass. The last thing you want is a child, a pet, going through the kitchen and running into that glass, and I mean, you could really have a serious accident. Whereas tempered glass will just shatter in a million pieces. You'll have a giant mess to clean up, but nobody will be hurt. And then how are you going to vent? If you're going to put a cooktop in the island, how are you going to vent that island? Because if it's a gas cooktop, you should have ventilation. So the thing you'll see in some of these pictures is, do you want a large ceiling vent coming down, you know, right above the island, which creates this obstruction? Or do we want to do some type of downdraft mechanism that helps evacuate that? So those are things to definitely consider. Now I'm going to go into some examples of some islands that these are, I think, all islands we've done, okay, at different residents in that. And this is a great example of that narrow island. So again, you only have the standard 2 foot deep cabinet there. I think we arched the back a little bit more for overhang purposes, but not necessarily as a seating area. So you can get a little bit more depth out of the countertop that way and not have the seating area. But some key things here is right here we got those 2 deep drawers. People love those for storage of pots and pans and that. This right here would be a pull-out trash cabinet. So again, directly across from the range, you got good function as a prep island to work with. You can see our electrical here on the end. I think there's probably an outlet on the other side as well for that. Okay, so this is an island on an island. So we actually are not limited to our little area here. We can do kitchens all over. This is a kitchen that we didn't do the labor, but we sold the products in Hawaii. And this is the large island of Hawaii. Wouldn't you love to have this view out the back of your house? So, but you can see a nice large island. They got all the tall area here with the ovens and the refrigerators and that, and the cleanup area over here. But then the island served as a cooking area, and you got cabinets going around. A very contemporary design. But I thought this would help interject some of that warmth too. We could just feel like we're just standing there, so. Or we're jealous. All right, this kitchen here shows a little bit like the one I showed you where we extended the countertop off. Well, this is an elevated version of that. But you can see we have the functioning island here, and then we have a an eating area all the way around. There's a pedestal that supports that, and you know, we accented with a different color in there. So using different surfaces, different colors is another way to really set that island off. You can see even this chandelier fixture just over the eating area, just from a decorative standpoint. So. All right, so here's a sink in the island, just a standard double bowl sink. So this is more of the cleanup island section. But you can see we've integrated another appliance over here, the little wine fridge. So sometimes refrigeration would be nice, especially if you're going to do a lot of prep in the island. You have the access to that element there. So appliances are something to consider. The backside doesn't show chairs, but I believe there's seating areas on the backside here to sit at. All right, so small islands. They don't have to be huge. You know, sometimes people want an island that's movable. This particular one's not because it has a sink, but we can do islands in this size that could be, you know, moved and set across over another way. So if you're doing entertaining, you can move it out of the way for that point, and then bring it back when you need it. But of course, this one has a sink set in it, but still small but functional. You know, a little prep area, little bookshelf, decorative. You can put casters on this too if it was a movable island, didn't have the sink in it. You could do it that way. So from small to large. This is a kitchen that we did that features the galley sink. We talked briefly about it before I even started. We have a galley sink here in our showroom. Nice sink, a 5-foot wide sink here and a 3-foot wide here. So it actually has 2 of the galley sinks. The galley sink itself is a great option if you like to entertain, you like to cook. You have everything there is to prep. You've got a nice cooking surface right there. Of course, they even have a larger cooking surface over here as well. This particular client, the reason they wanted the galley sink was because she loved to cook. And I think, if I remember correctly, this is her area. But then she gave this area over to her husband because he likes to cook too, but she doesn't necessarily like him to be in her way. So she gave him his own little area as well to work at. But and you can see that we have over here is a large eating area. This actually is one of those pedestals underneath there. And so you have seating all the way around here. And then they moved their dining area out to their, it's like a sun porch area. And we did this raised area again, talking about those outlets and switches. So we have that going all the way around that can be used that way. And the galley, typically on the larger galleys, you like to see 2 faucets in there. That way you have the ability for 2 people to work at the galley. So here's another nice functioning island. Dimensionally, it's probably about a 30-inch wide island. So instead of having seating here, we've got it set up that there's cupboards on both sides of this island. You can see the electrical outlet. Something to keep in mind about those electrical outlets is that the color of your island, I think you saw that one cherry one had a nice black outlet right in there. Of course, that's going to stand out. There's ways that we can get color matched outlets. They're not going to be an exact match, but they'll be tonally similar to the cabinets, so they kind of fade away instead of being right out there. This island right here features something that was a unique setup here, just using a towel bar as a as a towel hanging area. So we think of towel bars always putting them in the bathrooms, but sometimes you want to drape a towel in the kitchen and have it handy in that way, so you've got that ability. Inset style cabinetry, so another option when you're looking at the different styles of cabinetry. That, and it has a rustic, I think this is knotty alder, so a different wood species to give some of the knot characteristics in that. You can see this is decorative, so there's feet going on with this island here. One thing I will say, if this was to be a movable island, but you wanted electric in there, there is a way to we could put a floor outlet in the floor and plug in to an outlet strip so that you can have power of the island, but if you wanted to move it, you could disconnect that. because sometimes people ask me that question, if you want power, how do you make that happen? So this island has the functionality and the seating in one. So you've got a nice, decent length island here. Typically, I would say this is probably about an 8-foot island. It may look a little larger. Sometimes the camera does things with that, but we figure 2 foot per 2 foot per stool, so that gives us a 8-foot island right there. And you can see when the chairs are moved out of the way, you have all the storage that you have here. So all this storage, those doors open up, and you got all that shallow storage. Again, only 12 inches deep, but maybe for the stuff you don't get to all the time, but you want to have access to it. This is just the other side of that same island. So you can see we've got the deep drawers in there all the way around. We got the full height doors. Sometimes I know that people like the mixer lifts. I don't know if you've seen those mechanisms, but they pop up out of there. Those full height doors work great for that. And you can keep the KitchenAid mixer hidden away, but when you need it as a baking island, you have it, the ability to bring that up. This island here was a way to bring some color into here. We have the nice wood floor. It gives the warmth of the wood there. But then most everything's white here. And then we've got this, it's like a blue-green color. That's part of the coastal collection we sell through Medallion. And then a wood top that sits on top of here. Wood tops are nice. I mean, they're a nice way to bring warmth to an island. From a functionality standpoint, you do have to be careful what you're going to use that wood top for. The finishes on them are pretty durable, but you do have to be careful about leaving wet areas on there for a permanent long amount of time. This is the other side of the island to see. So there was a cooktop there, and again, as I talked about, it's nice if you're going to do a cooktop in there, if you do have the riser, just to protect from hands and stuff and somebody touching or getting burned in there. I think this was an induction cooktop, which is a good example. If you're going to look at putting a cooktop in an island and it needs to be electric, induction's a good way to not have to have the worries about the heat surface, because it transfers and heats the molecules in the pan. So therefore, you don't have any heat loss, and you could, after the pan's done, the cooking surface is warm to the touch, but it's not going to burn you. So from that standpoint. So sometimes we do islands in places where we've removed a wall, and from a structural standpoint, we need to be able to support what we've removed. So I don't know in both of these cases, or in one of these cases, might have a structural post in there supporting that beam that's going across. So it looks decorative, but it actually serves as a function. So if you were saying, hey, I want to blow the center wall out and open up into my dining room or front room area, that room, again, that I said that not everybody uses, you could do that and still have a seating area on both sides and really open up the kitchen. Here's an island. From a functionality standpoint, functions well, because you have the microwave set up there, the trash can there. The only thing I'll caution you is it's nice to put a microwave in a lower cabinet, but sometimes it's not the easiest to use because you got to crouch down to get to the controls and stuff there. So there's solutions for that. This would be one of them. Sharp makes a nice unit that the controls are tipped a little bit, and this is a drawer that pops out, so you can actually use it as the microwave in there, but it's going to work better than having to crouch down, and looks a little bit better as a built-in item. So when you're considering appliances, then there's definitely a good conversation to have with your designer as far as, I'm looking to do a microwave, what are my options, and we can talk through some of those. Yeah. So this island right here, we did as a situation as a retrofit. So the client had their perimeter kitchen already, and in their case, this part right here jetted out as an angle. There was seating area on the back side of that, and then the island had only 2 chairs on it, and it had posts and was very decorative, but it just didn't fit with what the client wanted. I mean, they literally wanted an island they could gather. And the other thing is, she despised this sink. This sink was 2 separate sinks with a center rail in between, and it really just didn't function well. The sink over here was almost useless, and this one, if she swung the faucet over, she had to turn it off to actually do that. So it just wasn't working. And originally came in and said, hey, what can we do about this sink? And I said, well, there's not much I can do about the sink, but what we could do is, why don't we give you a sink that you can use, and then that could just be your cleanup sink. And so this was a good solution. So now we have this galley sink in here across from her stove. that they can use as their main prep and working sink. And then this just becomes a cleanup sink here. And then we have a nice size island here with seating all the way around. So for functionality, it functioned very well. We will be doing the rest of this kitchen because now that we got this nice kitchen in there, she was like, oh, I don't know that I like the rest of the kitchen now. So the rest of the kitchen comes into play. So sometimes that's the way it happens. Here's this another kitchen. We call this the Hudson, I think the Hudson kitchen design. So you got that coming around with the angles. And that's always a tough one to get an island in because you got all these angles to work with. So sometimes we can mimic the shape of the island and create that in there. And then, you know, these are the types of things we'll do. I mean, if you really want, you know, an old world look, we can create that in that. We can also just keep it very contemporary and very clean. Here's another kitchen featuring the galley sink. You'll see a lot of the same thing. You know, when we talk about large islands, we try to encourage the galley because it does work great for when you're entertaining in that. But this is the 4-foot galley, and then we have the cooktop down here, and we have this raised area for seating in that. And this client was very creative. She color matched the ends of her wine bottles, matched these chairs. So there was another little bar area and everyone kind of matched. It's kind of fun. It's fun to see what the clients do afterwards, you know, with the different design. I mean, we help with some of that stuff, but at the same time, they have their own taste too. So. This kitchen right here is a good example of, you know, a nice island with good seating area, has the sink in there. You'll see these beams that we have in there, and actually those are not real wood. They're actually done with a foam composite material. But honestly, in looking at them, you wouldn't know the difference. So we can bring electrical in there. I know it doesn't have anything to do with the island specifically, but it's just a nice thing to see when we're looking at the design element there. Here's another island with seating around the backside. I think you'll see a view from the front side, but this is actually a pretty decent sized island. It does feature 2 sinks. You can't see the other sink. You'll see it on the other side there. But we've got, again, the raised area. So sometimes we like to see just little dimensional elements. So maybe it's not a raised area to sit at, but just a raised area in the center just to maybe put stuff, to set stuff on, to accent things, especially if the island's really large. So this is the other view from the other side. So you can see the island looks pretty large in size in there. We got seating all the way around. And then you can see we have the outlets and stuff in there. There's that microwave drawer again. I think it's a great way to put a microwave down low in a base cabinet. And sometimes we have fun kitchens where we can bring a lot of color in. So this particular kitchen interjects the white cabinets, but then brings in the beautiful yellow, bring in the sun right in the kitchen. And 2 islands we have here. This was actually a kosher kitchen as well. So we have the 2 sink areas, 2 separate sink areas for that, for prep. This is just another view of that same kitchen, so you can kind of see how that works. So we have a little seating area as well out here. So it served the function of a baking area or cooking area, and then a little seating area island. So this island right here was a good example of when I talked about ventilation. So if you want to put a cooktop in the island, you do have to be concerned of how you want to ventilate it, especially if you do a lot of frying and stuff like that where you're going to create odor. So this uses downdraft technology. So basically what you're cooking in there, the fan, and JennAir does a really good job of this, but it ventilates down. The thing you have to be careful about is if you have high pots like that, if you're boiling water, it's not necessarily going to get rid of the steam. It may not pull that down in. You may have to crack a window still from that standpoint. But if you're doing, cooking that involves grease and that element down low, you have that ability. And then I think there's filters and stuff that you can rinse out to clean in that. So that's one way to do that. You'll see a little feature here at the end. We did these little legs inset in there. We had the 4.5 inches that we needed to work with, and so we got a place for little bottles of oil and stuff like that. So we try to utilize every square inch of that island as much as possible for design. So here's the other example. So if you have a gas cooktop and you don't want to do the downdraft system, and they make different downdrafts. They make them integrated in the actual cooking product themselves, and then they make a pop-up that actually sits in behind the stove and telescopes up. And that does give you a little bit more height, but it also creates a blockade, plus you need to be able to have the planning for that. So here's just the island hood above. The island hood above is going to be your most efficient in ventilation. but sometimes could be obtrusive in the design. So that's something to consider. They are making hoods more and more decorative. I mean, so we're seeing hoods that are cylindrical in shape, and so they almost look like a light that comes down, but it actually is ventilation. So I'm sure as our technology keeps increasing, they'll figure out how to make a, you know, a vent fan in your watch or something. So here's an island that we did. We did in this particular project. We did the countertops. We did the tile splash. We did not make the cabinets. But this is something I want to talk about in terms of space planning. So this island's great, and it's huge. And it's, I think, if I remember correctly, 9 foot by 9 foot. So it's a huge island. The one issue about this island is it's so big that you can never reach the center. Exactly. So, you know, that's definitely something to consider. And it's nice to have the large island that you can get all the way around. But, you know, what are you going to do with this space in here on that element? We did feature the galley sink in here, and then we did a matching sink similar by Lenovo that has the ledge on it. So, and that's it. That wraps up the presentation on islands. So I'm going to open it up real quick for some questions. If you have any questions on islands or anything you might have seen there. So is there anything I can answer for you?
For one island, we're doing the storage and you move the stools away. How big does that island have to be?
Yeah, so basically what you have is on the front portion of that, you've got 2 foot where where your front portion, and then the storage was another 12 inches. So that was 36 inches. And then the overhang was probably another foot. So around 4 feet would be ideal to do that setup. But in our cabinet lines, we have the ability to make the depth shallower. So in other words, if you wanted a storage area maybe for cups or glasses, and you only had the ability, we could do a 6-inch deep cabinet on the back side that could be used for small plates, cups, glasses, and that, vases, you know, things that, you know, you need to store somewhere, but, you know, that's a good spot for it. Yeah. Yeah. So, any other questions?
Did you come from design for us?
We do. So yeah, we offer in-home. So what we do is an in-store consultation first and talk about your project and maybe have you bring a few pictures of what you're trying to do and talk about that element of it. Then we set up an appointment to come out to the house and do a measure. We do have a measure fee involved to do that. We bring that information back and we draw up a design so you can see your island. I mean, you saw finished pictures here, but we show you pictures of what your project's going to look like that look real close to what you see there on that. So, yeah.
Like if we wanted to knock out some walls, do you do that?
We do, yeah. Yep, we can remove walls, and if it's a bearing wall, or we can kind of figure out if it's a bearing wall and put the beam work in to do that. So, yes, we can do that type of work. Yep. Yep. Any other questions? All right. Well, I thank you very much for attending today's seminar. The next seminar, I think, is at 1:45. Michelle will be talking about refacing, whether to reface your cabinets or replace them. So thank you. And thank you at home.